Good morning. This we will see the solved question paper of May 2017 Nursing Research and Statistics. The first question was enumerate the purpose and methods of review of literature. Describe annotated bibliography briefly. Annotated bibliography is a list of sources that provides publication information and short description of each source called annotation. Some annotations merely describe the content and scope of source. Others evaluate the source's authority, currency, and relevance to the research purpose. Annotation means a descriptive summary or explanation of the resource, provides information about the content of the material, provides an evaluation or critique of the resource. Purpose of the writing annotation is show what you have done to the researcher, provide additional information, make it easier to use the bibliography, get a better sense of scholarship on research subject matter, provide the reader with enough information to know whether they want to look at the resource for their own research. Things to include in annotations are summary of purpose, arguments and ideas, description of what is included in the material, that means some specified, evaluation and critiques of its relevance to the research project at hand. Use complete sentence, keep them in the same present verb tense. Use your own idea, words and sentences. Do not quote the author. Each annotation should have 3 to 5 sentences long, but sometimes it will be necessary to provide more than this. Give description of what the resource is about. For books, read the book, introduction, preface, chapter titles and summaries. If you can't read the entire book, read the chapters that are relevant to your research. Make note of additional items such as graphics, pictures, chart, index, works cited list and notes. For articles, read the entire article, make special note on introductions of the articles and conclusions or summaries drawn. Do not simply quote the summary or abstract provided at the beginning of scholarly journal articles. Decide whether the additional information provided as images and graphs are useful supporting the text. The second question is sampling criteria. Sampling is the process of choosing representative portions of the entire population. It's an integral part of research methodology. It involves selecting the people, events, behaviors, or other elements with which to conduct the study. Sampling criteria refers to the essential characteristic of a subject or respondent, such as ability to read and write responses on data collection instruments. The steps involved in the sampling include identify the target population, identify the subject or respondent population, specify the criteria for subject or respondent selection, specify the sampling deciding, recruit the subject. Criteria that specify characteristic of a target population. Criteria that specify characteristic populations. First one is inclusion criteria. That means desirable characteristics are the inclusion criteria. Able to speak or read English, able to speak, then diagnosed with diabetes last month, sorry for the disturbance, the sentence has been repeated here, please forgive. Exclusion criteria means the undesirable characteristic will not be included, like mental illness or cognitive dysfunction, age below 18 years, able to speak or write English, unable to speak or write English. Sampling plans will depend on questions that they had designed to answer. The basic criteria include replication, representative, random, controls, method validation. The second question is observation method. The third question. The observation method is most commonly used method. This we have seen in the previous question papers, and it is defined as systematic description of events, behaviors and artifacts in a social setting chosen for the study. Characteristic of observation include scientific observation is systematic, specific, objective, recorded. Observation should be done by an expert person. It is variable. It have both a physical and mental activity. It is selective and it is purposive and not casual. It captures natural social context. Type of observation are participant observation, non-participant observation, and direct observation and indirect observation. Indirect observation again divided into controlled observation and uncontrolled observation. Advantages of observation include reliable, objective, natural setting, useful for young and shy, no need for equipment or tool, useful for individuals, immediate detection of problems, most direct measure of behavior, provides direct information, easy to complete, saves time. The disadvantages include subjectivity, less accuracy, interference, objective recording, lack of competency, unnatural situation, expensive, slow and laborious, biased, lack of cooperation, favoritism, may require training, observers' presence may create artificial situations, difficult to analyze. In some cases, use of observational methods may be unethical, that is, observing a person without their knowledge or consent. Next question is variable. Variable is a central idea in a researcher. Variable that defined as anything that has quantity or quality, that has variables or qualities and properties or characteristic of a person, things or situation that may change or vary. Chin and Kramer state that variables are concepts at different levels of abstractions that are concisely defined to promote their measurements or manipulation in a study. Variables are classified based on their nature, actions, effects, or the variables. Variables are generally anything that assume different numerical or categorical value. Type of variables are continuous or discontinuous, dependent or independent, extraneous variable. Independent variables are the two variables interrelated and mainly observed in correlational, interventional, pre-experimental, quasi-experimental, and experimental research study. An independent variable is a stimulus or activity that is manipulated or varied by the researcher to create an effect on a dependent variable. A dependent variable is the outcome of a response due to the effect of independent variable which researcher wants to predict or explain. Research variable in descriptive, exploratory, comparative, qualitative, and research studies, variables are observed or measured in natural setting as they exist, without manipulating or imposing the effect of intervention or treatment. Here, no independent variable is manipulated and no cause-effect relationship is examined. The variables are considered as research variable. Therefore, research variable can be defined as qualities, attributes, properties, or characteristics which are observed or measured in a natural setting without manipulating and establishing cause-effect relationship. Demographic variables. These researchers make attempt to study the sample characteristic and present them in research finding. Sometimes researchers even try to establish relations of demographic variables with research variables. This characteristic and attribute of studies subject are considered as demographic variable. Common demographic variables are age, gender, educational status, religion, social class, marital status, habitat, occupation, income, and medical diagnosis, etc. Extraneous variables. Extraneous variables are those factors which are not part of the study but may affect the measurement of the study variables. These variables are usually recognized and controlled by researchers in quasi-experimental and experimental study. Generally, specific research design and sample inclusion and exclusion criteria are used to control influence of extraneous variable. For example, a study is conducted to assess the effect of two different pin-site care protocol in prevention of pin-site infection among the patients with external skeletal fistula. In the study, pin-site care protocol are independent variable. The pin-site infection is a dependent variable. However, dependent variable pin-site infection may also be influenced by some of other factors as low hemoglobin level or higher blood sugar level among these patients. These factors are considered as extraneous variables, which may have unwanted effect on the patients with external skeletal fixation. Continuous, discrete, and categorical variables. Continuous variables are assumed in infinite number of values between 2 points. If we consider the continuous variable weight between 1 and 2 kg, number of values will be limitless like 1.005, 1.7, 1.33 and it's like that. On other hand, discrete variable in one that infinite number of values between 2 points representing discrete quantities. Categorical variables belonging to a kind of measurement called nominal. In nominal measurements, these are two or more subset of set things being measured. Need for nursing research. Nursing research helps to build and expand the body of nursing knowledge, validate and refine existing nursing practice, make healthcare efficient and cost-effective, to develop, refine, and extend scientific base of knowledge which is required for quality nursing care, education, administration, to enhance the body of professional knowledge in nursing, to provide foundation for evidence-based nursing practices, to help expansion of knowledge is essential for continued growth of nursing profession. To enhance the professional as research an essential component of any profession, to define parameters of nursing which will help nurses to identify boundaries of nursing profession, to refine and eliminate all knowledge so that it helps to elimination of nursing acts that have no effect on achievement of desired client outcomes. Writing an accurate objective. Research objective is a clear, concise, declarative statement which provides direction to investigate the variables. Generally, the research objective focuses on the ways to measure the variables just to identify or describe them. Sometimes objectives are directed towards identifying the relationship or difference between two variables. Characteristic of research objectives are: research objective is a concrete statement specifying what the research is trying to achieve. A well-worded objective will be SMART. That means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Research objectives should be relevant, feasible, logical, observable, unequivocal, and measurable. Objective is a purpose that can be reasonably achieved within the expected time frame with the available resources. The objective or the research project summarizes what is to be achieved by the study. The research objectives are the specific accomplishment the researcher hopes to achieve by the study. The objective include obtaining answers to research questions or testing the research hypothesis. Method of stating objective. While stating the objective, following guidelines has to be taken care of. That means objectives should be presented briefly and concisely. They cover different aspects of problem and its contributing factors in a coherent way and in logical sequence. The objectives are clearly phrased in operational terms specifying exactly what researcher is going to do, where and for what purpose. They are realistic considering the local conditions. Use action words that are specified enough to be evaluated. The next question is interpretation of data. Interpretation takes the result of analysis, make inference pertinent to the research studied, and draws conclusions about these relations. Interpretation refers to task of drawing inference from the collected facts after an analytical and experimental study. In fact, it is a search for broader meaning of research finding. The task of interpretation has two major aspects, namely, effort to establish continuity in research through linking the result of a given study with those of another, and establishment of some explanation concepts. Why interpretation? Interpretation is essential for a simple reason that usefulness and utility of research findings lie under proper interpretation. It is being considered that the basic component for the researcher because of the following process. It is through the interpretation that the researcher can understand the abstract principle that works beneath his findings. He can link up his findings with those of the other studies having the same abstract principle and thereby can predict about concrete world of events. Fresh inquiries can test these predictions later on. This way, continuity in research can be maintained. Interpretation leads to establishment. Interpretation leads to establishment of explanatory concepts that can serve as a guide for future research studies. Researcher can better appreciate only through the interpretation why his findings are what they are and can make others to understand the real significance of research findings. Interpretation of the findings of exploratory research often result into hypotheses for experimental research, and such interpretation is involved in the transition from exploratory to experimental research. Techniques of interpretation. It is not an easy job. It requires great skill and dexterity on part of researcher. The technique of interpretation have following steps. That means the researcher must give reasonable explanation on the relationship which she or he has found, must interpret in the lines of relationship in terms of underlying process. Second, extraneous information. If collected during the study, it must be considered by interpreting the final results of the research study, for it proved to be a key factor in understanding the problem under consideration. Then it is advisable before embarking upon final interpretation to consult someone having insight into the study and who is frank and honest, will not hesitate to point out the omissions, errors and logical argumentation. Research must be accomplished the task of interpretation only after considering all relevant factors affecting the problem to avoid false generalization. Then precautions interpretation. One should always remember that even if the data properly collected and analyzed, wrong interpretation would lead to inaccurate conclusions. It is therefore absolutely essential that the task of interpretation be accomplished with a patience and impartial manner and also in a correct perspective. Scales of measurement. Scales of measurements refers to the ways in which the variable numbers are defined and categorized. Each scale of measurement has certain properties which in turn determines the appropriateness for use of certain statistical analysis. The four scale, ordinal, nominal, interval and ratio scale. And next question is test of significance. In statistics, the test of significance are the method of reaching conclusion to reject or support claims based on the sample data. In statistics, it is important to know if the result of experiment is significant enough or not. In order to measure the significance, there are some predefined tests that we apply. These tests are called tests of significance or simplify the significance test. In statistical testing is subject to some degree of error. For some experiment, the research is required to define the probability of sampling error in advance. In any test which does not consider the entire population, the sampling error does exist. The testing significance is very important in statistical research. The significance level is the level at which it can be accepted if a given event is statistically significant. It is termed as a p-value. It is observed that the bigger the sample are less prone to chance, and the sample size plays a vital role in measuring the statistical significance. One should use only representative and random samples for significant testing. The process of testing, there are following steps. First, state hypothesis for research. Stating null hypothesis, selecting a probability of error level, selecting and computing statistical significance test, interpreting the result. In context of statistical significance of data, the p-value is an important terminology for hypothesis test. The p-value is said to be a function of observed sample because which is used for the statistical hypothesis. The threshold value is to be selected before the test is performed. This value is known as significance level, that is traditionally 1% or 5% divided by alpha. In this case, the p-value is smaller than or equal to the significance level that is said to be inconsistent for our assumption of the null hypothesis to be true. Therefore, null hypothesis should be rejected and alternative hypothesis is supposed to be accepted or assumed as true. Validity of the tool. Establishing validity of the tool, how the research talk about the extent of the result present reality. Research method, quantitative or qualitative method of studying real phenomena. Validity refers how much that of phenomena they measure, namely how much noise or unrelated information is captured by the result. Face validity is how valid your result seem based on how they look. This is least scientific method of validity as it is not quantified using statistical measures. Content validity is considered as a subjective form of measurement because it still relies on people's perception of measuring the construct that would be otherwise be difficult to measure. Then construct validity is the degree to which the inference can be made from operationalizations. In your study, constructs on which the operationalization is based. To establish a construct validity, you must first provide evidence to your data supports the theoretical structure. Internal validity refers to the extent to which independent variable can accurately be stated to produce observed effect. Then external validity refers extent to which the result of the study can be generalized beyond the sample, which is to say that you can apply your findings to other people and settings. The difference between median and mode. Middle number of a given set of values is known as a median. Place all numbers in ascending or descending order. Data classification is skewed. The median is best representative. Most frequently used number is known as a mode. The mode is derived from the number which have frequency occurred in series. When there is a nominal distribution of data, mode is preferred. Descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. Descriptive statistics is that branch of statistics which is concerned with describing the population under study. They organize, analyze present data in a meaningful way. It explains the data which is already known to summarize the sample, describe the situation, use graphs and tables. Inferential statistics is a type of statistics that focus on drawing conclusions about populations on the basis of sample analysis and observation. It compares, tests and predict data. It attempts to reach the conclusions to learn about population that extends beyond data available, to explain the chance of occurrence of an event, the probability. Structured interview and unstructured interview. Structured interview is the predetermined questions are prepared. It is a quantitative, closed-end questions to validate result when number of candidates are quite large. Such type is descriptive. Some same set of questions put to all candidates. Structured interview is used positive. In a structured interview, the characteristics are evaluated or explicit. Questions are being asked to respondents not set in advance. It is qualitative, open-ended questions to probe personal details. Research type is exploratory. Different questions are put to different candidates. Unstructured interview is used by interpretatives and its unstructured interview characteristic evaluated are implicit. Correlation association. Association is the term used for assessing the relationship between categorical variable. Correlation is the term used for assessing relation between continuous variable. Correlation is a strict exact term that have one meaning used in classical statistics, short range of everyday situation application. Association is very ambiguous term that describes a lot of different things. It rarely used in science, and when there is psychology, it can be easily replaced by other terms. Can be used to describe a lot of everyday things. Hypothesis and assumption. Hypothesis is a prediction. It's a statistically tested prediction about relationship between variables. Assumptions are basically belief and idea that would be hold true. Little or no evidence that are statistically tested beliefs about the variables. Searchers attempt to discover the correlation. Thank you.